Hey everybody, and welcome to Difference Makers. My name is Pastor Tyler Warner from Calvary Chapel in Trussville, Alabama. I really dig that new intro, man. That's really cool. I like that a lot. You're watching us here on BGTV Studios. Appreciate them helping us out here. We're going to be talking more about writing today, how we need your book. We're going to talk about the publishing step, the final big get it out there and ship it step of the process. But before we get to that, I want to remind everybody about ironworks.media. Ironworks.media is what we are building over at Calvary Chapel, Trussville, which we are going to make the premier Christian resource network in Calvary Chapel and beyond. We've got this podcast. We've got the other one that we do, which is a deep theology dive. We've got conferences, a new one coming up in the new year, focusing on the Bible, the theology of Scripture, and lots of other things available, including books, which we're talking about today. We've got the newest one called Firebrand, which is a missionary biography that you are not going to want to miss. It's about a man who was training to be a Hindu priest, became an underground revolutionary, ended up getting saved, and now he trains pastors in Nepal. We will talk more about that on another day, I like to think. But you can check that out at ironworks.media. If you join our mailing list, you can download 2 free ebooks right away to give you a taste of what we're doing. You can be kept up to date about all the events and all the new releases that are coming up. And if you want to find out more about the church I pastor, you can go to calvarychapeltrussville.com. This is part 4 of the series we've been calling We Need Your Book. We are focusing on one specific area of our calling. Difference Makers is all about being motivated and inspired to live the life that God has called you to live. And for me, that includes writing, at least in part. And I know that there are a lot of other people who feel the same way. So I think it's been interesting and fun to take a break and kind of look at one specific area of this sort of thing. And we've talked about business before and other things too. And I hope that this has been enlightening and educational for you, and also shown you the level of detail and work that ought to be put towards whatever God has asked you to do, whether it's writing or anything else. So today we're going to be talking about what is probably going to be the last one, the final step of the process, and that's publishing. You know, it's a lot of fun starting things. Starting things is an awful lot of fun. New books are fun. When I start writing a new book, it's all I can talk about. New ideas in life, whatever they are exciting. New relationships are exciting. New ministries are exciting. But what is much harder and can feel a lot less fun along the way is actually finishing. Starting is fun, finishing is hard because there's a big, long middle that you have to get through. Finishing is actually fun too, but most people are unable to get there and actually complete the project because you've got to go through a long slog that it doesn't feel like it did when you started. That's why there are so many people who will leave a draft of their book unedited, or an edited book unprinted. I've met lots of pastors that say, oh yeah, I've actually written a book. And I say, where is it? Oh, it's on a disc somewhere, or it's on my computer. Have you printed it? Yeah, I got one copy here. Well, what are you going to do with it? Oh, I don't know. There's that final step that people sometimes don't want to step over. And this is when you need to, as we say, ship it. You've got to finish it. And I don't just mean finish the manuscript or finish the editing, but actually get it out there to the world. And obviously this can look different depending on your audience. You know, for me, I've written several fiction books that I don't release on a wide scale. They're for me and my family and my friends, and I like it that much. I don't mind if anybody else reads it. Meanwhile, we put a ton of effort into putting the Christian books out, the nonfiction books, so that we can get them as wide a distribution as possible. And we're hoping to build that into the future. While at the same time, I've not pursued traditional publishing, which might give me a wider release even still. So what this looks like can be different, but I want you to get to the point where you can finally finish, whether it's just for you or whether you're submitting to publish it. If you're trying to send it off to a real publisher, I want it to be so good that they can't help but say no. And if you're just keeping it for yourself, then at the very least, let's get a slick-looking copy that you don't mind having on display at your home. We've got to learn to finish, and that applies to lots of things in writing, in ministry, and business. You've got to finish. Don't tell yourself that it's good enough when you are not done yet. That's just fear talking. That's intimidation talking, and we can beat fear and intimidation. The Lord is with us. So we're going to talk about the process that I go through, having self-published 5 different books, and what I've done to make this happen. I've recently especially been getting lots of compliments on the quality of the book, on the covers, on the inside. I think I've gotten much better at this over the process of doing 5 of them. And so I like to think I know what I'm doing here. At least I can tell you what I've done, and you can then maybe use that as a jumping off point. So let's talk about some real down and dirty details about what it takes to publish a book and format it yourself. And this is the first thing I'm actually going to talk about is formatting this thing. By far, my least favorite part of writing a book and releasing it is formatting the interior of the book. Writing is fun. Editing's not so bad. I love doing audiobooks, and covers are fun. But the interior is just a pain and a half. And having done it, all told, 8 times, 5, with the I of releasing them publicly, I have gone through it over and over again to where now I have a template that I use. I have a blank template on my computer that I save. And when I finish a new book, I try to drop it into that template so that I don't have to remember all the little details that I'm going to share with you today when I'm in the heat of battle trying to get this thing finished. And I know my process isn't perfect, but I'm just going to let you know at least what's got to happen as you're going through this. You've got to figure out the dimensions of your book. That seems very basic, but it needs to happen. It's the kind of thing you don't really think about. How big is this thing going to be? I got this book right here, Desolation of Israel. That is 6 inches by 9 inches. So if you've ever had a 6x9 card, that's how big it is. Another common size is 8 inches by 5 inches. That's Firebrand, the newest book we released. I did one that was half an inch smaller. The actual Difference Makers book is smaller than that because it was a very short book. And I've done one in between. But I would say that for 90% of cases, having learned this now, if it's a big book, go for 6x9. If it's a medium or small book, go for 8x5. These are our widths that you're going to be able to find and you'll be able to print with most printers. Some people like to go 8.5 by 5.5. That's cool. I think it's just easy to remember. 8.5, 8x5 for smaller, medium books, 9x6 for big books. Anything larger than 9x6, it starts to feel like a textbook, and you don't really want that, unless you write a textbook, I guess. So what I do is I will open up a Word document. I do this all in Microsoft Word, and I'm sure Pages and everything else will be able to handle this for you as well. And I'm probably going to do this, and somebody's going to drop some AI thing in the comments, like, you can just do this for free if you ask so-and-so to do it. Well, anyway, here's what I do. I make the margins, and the top and bottom, they are 1-inch margins, and the right and left, they are 0.75-inch margins. Now, that can be different depending on where you're publishing it and where you're printing it, but I have found that is very simple. There's some places that want you to have it very specific. I found that 1 on the top and bottom, 0.75 on the right and left will be enough, because you got to make sure that when you close the book that the words aren't slipping down into the crease there, and you also don't want it to be so wide. You ever get one of those old books, like the margins are this big and the text is only like that? It doesn't look very well. So 1x7.5 are your margins there. Your font needs to be smaller than you think. And by that, I mean 11 is probably too big. 11 is probably too big of a font size for you. Now, you remember printing it out as 12-point Times New Roman when you printed out papers in school. But remember, that paper was 8.5 by 11, so it looked nice on that page. You reduce that page by quite a bit, and those words are going to stand out real big. 10 is a good place to start. You might even want to go smaller than that and do 9. I believe that Desolation here is 9-point font. And you might think, oh, it's so small. But once you print it out on an actual piece of paper, you'll realize it's not that bad. If you doubt me, print out on a normal sheet of paper something in like a paragraph in 11 point, 10 point, 9 point, and then compare that to the books that you have on your shelves and see how close it actually is. Font needs to be smaller than you think. Speaking of font, common fonts for the interior of books are Times New Roman, believe it or not. This is usually for nonfiction, I have found, because it's very official, very formal looking. It kind of looks old-fashioned to me, so I don't use it. Garamond is a popular one. These are all standard on a Mac computer anyway, probably standard at any Microsoft Word. And the one that I've used the most often is Palatino. Palatino is the font that I use. And you might think that's kind of a little silly, but what you want is something that looks normal, standard size, that has serif. Serif is when you have the little edges sticking out. P can look like this, or you can have the little line on the bottom. That's serif. So you want something like that. That's standard for the interior of a book. And what I would say, you can look at some of your favorite books in your library. Go to the front pages, the pages you always skip over when trying to get to the good stuff. Sometimes they'll tell you what font they used, and then you can just borrow that. But like I said, Times New Roman is very popular. So is Garamond. So is Palatino, which is the one I tend to use. Told you we're getting down to the weeds here today, didn't I? Your headings in your book. Not every book has headings. I write nonfiction, so there's always headings. I like to use multiple different formats. Headings should be of a larger font and a different font than what is in the actual text. And the way that I've done this is a big heading is always going to be, if I'm doing an 11-point font, it's probably going to be something like 14, something around that difference. I'm going to bold it. The first, big headings are bold. Headings underneath that are going to be the same size, but not bolded. And below that, it's italics. And you can choose if you want to do uppercase or lowercase. But I also would say for headings, this is my preference, I do sans serif fonts for my headings. So just like I said, the little lines that stick out, when you're writing in like Times New Roman or something, if you do something like Calibri, which is the standard font in most Microsoft Word now, there's no extra lines. So the L's and the capital I's look alike. There's no lines on the top and bottom. I think that looks nice because if all the text is serif font, all kind of looks like that, and then you get something big and bold and easy to read, it's easy on your eyes. Your tabs, when you're tabbing at the beginning of paragraphs and everything, I recommend tabs of 0.25 inches, not 0.5 inches. 0.5 inch looks good on a regular piece of paper. When you put it in a book, it just looks too fat. So you want to have about 0.25, a quarter inch tabs, which you can adjust in the formatting of your document. You also want to turn on something called widow/orphan control, which will prevent you from starting a page with just like one line sitting up there at the top. Widow and orphan controls. I must go faster, so let's go ahead and run through some of this, the formatting. Your headers, the headers at the top of the page. I recommend having the number on the outside page, at the top at the outside of the page, and the title of the book on the inside of the page on the top. Some people like to do the chapter title instead of the book title, and some people like to do just one number in the center on the bottom. That's fine too, but I have found that having the numbers at the top and having the book title up there, it looks really professional and looks really, really nice. Page numbers should not go on the first page of a chapter. So if you have the chapter with the heading, you shouldn't have a little one. Look at any book that you've got. First page of chapters do not have page numbers on them, and little things like that can make your book look small time, and I don't want that for you. Because of the page number thing, I save each chapter as a separate document. I have Desolation of Israel, chapter 1, Firebrand, chapter 10, and I start with the chapter heading, and then I have the page numbers. You can push a button that says don't include page number on the first page, and then you can select what number you start from, so that way you continue from the previous number as long as you are keeping track of which is which. Now, for the chapter titles, I do this. I don't mind saying I steal this. I look through books in my library until I find chapter headings that look nice and say, I'm going to copy that. There's what is it called? I can remember it. Oh, I can't remember what it's like. It's an exegesis book that I have. It's a fancy academic Bible study book that I have back at the church. And when I opened that up, I saw how they headed the chapters, and I said, I'm going to do that. So I just copied that in my book. Now, I changed it some as I got into it, but that's what I do. Most fiction books are just going to have a number. Most nonfiction books are going to have a little something. We included a cool little logo for Firebrand on each page. So it's going to be different. Each one should be about 1/3 down the page. And I would say just copy it from somebody who did a good job and then make it your own there. Typically, when you're formatting a book, you want a chapter to begin on the right page, the right-hand page. Some books you open it up, especially if it's a really long book, where you'll have starting on the right or left, depending on where it ended. But it is most common for you to have a blank page on the left, and then the chapter starts on the right. Now, if the chapter ends on the left, it'll start on the right. But if it ends on the right page, you want to include a blank. So you want to make sure that you can include that. These little things, they really make it look like you put time into it. People can't even maybe tell why, but little things like that go, oh yeah, this is like a real deal. Your first pages in your book. These are a little confusing, but again, this is something where you want to open up a couple of books at home that are like what you're doing and make sure it looks something like that. You need to have a title page. Here's what you typically do. You have a title page that just has the title and the author's name on it. So Firebrand, The Incendiary Life of an Nepali Christian by G. Tyler Warner. You turn the page, and the next page there is the same thing, except they've added publication information at the bottom. If you're self-publishing, then you can either ascribe a name to your publishing. A lot of people do their initials. So for me, it'd be like GTW Publishing. For us now, we do Ironworks Media. We've done Calvary Chapel Trustville in the past, and we need to actually go back and standardize that. But you have that information right there. You have your address. You have contact information for how you can get in touch with the publisher. That's typical. And even if you're just doing it yourself, it's a good way to make it look nice and make it look professional. Then you need to have your title. Oh, sorry. One thing. Your title page should match the style of the cover of the book. So if you've got a book with a really cool font on the front and a really cool font for the subtitle and for the author name, and then you open it up and it's the same font as everything else, it's going to feel off. It will look much nicer if you take the same visual that you've got on the front of the book and stick that on your title page. So if you're working with somebody who's making the cover for you, contact them and find out what fonts they used, and they'll be happy to send it to you, and that way you can just keep it looking sharp. You will need a left-hand page before usually the table of contents or the dedication. You maybe have seen this on the left hand. It's all very small font. It's all kind of tucked away to the side with all of your copyright information, where you're going to have the official title, the official name, who owns the copyright, what year is it. You're going to have your ISBN, which is a number that is assigned to books for publishing purposes. You're going to have disclaimers like this book is the copyright is owned by the author and it cannot be redistributed. If you're writing a book with scripture references in it, whatever translation of the Bible you use, the publisher will provide for you a paragraph that you put in there that says all quotations of scripture are in the English Standard Version of this year, and you can find it here. It's their way of just kind of keeping things under control for the use of their translations. That's kind of, you can find that online, copy and paste, and just stick that in there. That's what I've always done. And then you can add a dedication. Dedications usually have small font around a third of the way down the page. Table of contents, that can be a bear. Just make sure that you line up your tabs. If you know how to do that with the ruler in Microsoft Word, you can line up your tabs so that the numbers and the titles all start at the same place. I like to include little dots because I always find it confusing. If you just have the name and then you have the number and you're trying to like put your finger across, I'll just put a little dot line all the way across so that it looks nice in the table of contents. I also like to include epigraphs at the front of my book. So for Firebrand, we had the verse from Zechariah 3, verse 2, "Is this not a brand plucked from the fire?" which is where we got the name. For Desolation of Israel, we had the quote from the song, O come, Emmanuel, and ransom captive Israel," that moans in lonely exile here. So that was cool to add, I think. Not everybody does an epigraph or I forget what you call it at the end, but similar kind of thing at the end. But those can be fun to do. Now, when it comes to the final pages, it's typical to have an author's page. You can put a picture of yourself in there and a little description. Not everybody does that. I always do that. It kind of lets everybody know who I am, especially since if it's a Bible study book, I want people to know that I'm an actual person. I'm an actual pastor. Here's where they can find me. I think those kind of things are reassuring for people. Fiction doesn't usually do that so much unless the author has some kind of notoriety there, but nonfiction is a little more dependent upon the author as the writer. You can understand that maybe. And I always include links to the other books. There's always an also by, a couple pages that have the most recent books that we've done. Now, once I've done all that mess, and you can always go back and write this down if you like, I will export each chapter as its own PDF file. So chapter 1, and I'll label it Firebrand Chapter 1, pages 28 through 47. So that way I can keep track of which pages go where. And I also, if I need to add a blank page anywhere, I know where it goes. I export them all as PDFs, I line them up, and I combine them all into one master file. And you absolutely must scroll through every page and make sure that that worked, because you do not want to print it with a chapter over here. You ever get a book like that? Like you get like half a chapter in the middle? It's probably because during this process, when they're combining the files, somebody didn't delete something all the way. So that's the interior. Once you get through that, you're good. The rest of it is going to be fun. Let's talk about the cover design. For a book cover, if you do not have expertise in graphic design, do not do it yourself. It will not look good. Find someone else who does. I tried designing a couple book covers myself. I've got a couple that I use for my fiction books only, and there's even one of them that was so ugly, I went out and just ended up paying somebody to do it, because even though it's not going anywhere, I just couldn't stand to look at it. So, and I used to do graphics, like very basic graphic design for a church, and I would say that it is a skill to create good book covers, and it is worth getting somebody who can help. Now, maybe you know somebody who can help. We have a lady at our church who is tremendous at making these covers, and we work really well together. But this is something that if you're looking to pay somebody, I don't pay for my own editor, but I would pay for a cover designer. And I just remind you, you get what you pay for. If you go to Fiverr and you spend $6 to get a cover, you might get a $6 cover. If you pay a little bit more than that, you'll have more opportunity to work with them and negotiate what it actually looks like. The dimensions of your cover are going to be determined by whatever printer you're using. Now, you might say, I have a 6x9 book, but if you're printing with Kindle or if you're printing with a printer in town, they might want it to actually be a little bigger, like not 6x9, but like 6.125 by 9.85 or something crazy like that. So you want to make sure you look into that. Where are you going to print it? And that'll determine the dimensions of your cover, and your author or your designer is going to want to know that. And I would say when you're giving somebody graphic design advice, tell them what you want. Have an idea, have a paragraph or so of what you want, and offer what are called comps, comparisons. Look up other covers that are in the style that you want, send it to them and say something like this. With these colors, I kind of like this idea, but I don't know, let's see where we go from there. And when they send you back a version of it, have an idea of what you want. Don't just say, I don't know. Offer good suggestions. Don't just say, I don't know, I don't like that. Something about it's not good. You need to tell them what you like. All right, this is okay, but can we make the font of my title bigger? Or could we change this from yellow to blue? If I don't have the Firebrand book with me, one of the biggest changes we made is she sent it back and it looked more or less like what it looks now. But what we had done is we had a blue book with white mountains on the front and then the red flame. And I was staring at it like, this is okay, but I said, why don't we flip it and have the white background with the blue mountains? And when we did that, both of us were like, that's it, that's much better, and that's what we ended up going with. So specific suggestions are helpful. I recommend with a book cover, bright colors, strong contrast, even if you're gonna have something that's dark. I kind of feel like the era of muddy brown looking books are over and things need to stand out a little bit. Go to the bookstore and look around and see what catches your eye to get some ideas that way. And don't neglect the spine of your book. The spine is going to be what's sticking out for everybody to see. Make sure that you give that a little bit of love too. You may want to write a description for the back of the book. Again, this is more common with nonfiction than with fiction. Usually, with fiction, you'll have like a blurb or two, like 1 or 2 sentences. But for nonfiction, you're going to want to give a paragraph or 2 or 3 explaining what this book is. And you're also going to want to put your author's picture and a description of yourself. If you don't want to do a picture, at least do a description of yourself. And I have found that I just use my church bio. It's very easy for me to do that. And be sure when you're designing the cover to save room on the back for the barcode. This is a common problem we've had where it looks really great and we send it off and it comes back and then there's the thing covering up half of our page. We don't want that. So make sure you save room for a barcode and use a good picture of yourself. Don't take a selfie and then post that. Find somebody who owns a camera, take them out to lunch and say, will you take a couple headshots of me? Get something good so that it looks professional. All right. Now that we've formatted the interior, we've done the cover, I'm going to have to hustle to the end here. Where do you publish this thing? I'm going to tell you right now, I cannot help you with traditional publishing. I've not ever done, a letter, an inquiry. I've never sent in a manuscript for anything like that. I've only ever self-published. So all I'm going to tell you is I have been through the following process 8 times. I recommend it. It's not perfect. I wouldn't mind changing if we could find something better. But for right now, Kindle Direct Publishing is what I use, and it's what I recommend to new authors to use as well, KDP. If you just search KDP, I think the website is kdp.amazon.com. This is Amazon's in-house printing and publishing arm. They're not perfect. They're not going to really do anything for you. You're not going to get boosted on Amazon, although they will let you pay for that if you want to do it. They take a giant whack of royalties out of your book too, by the way. So if you sell it for $25, they're going to take out the print cost and they're going to take a big percentage of what you're making so that they can continue to do it that way. That's what it is. You don't pay anything up front. They'll ship it at Amazon shipping and everything, but they are going to take a whack out of it. But what is advantageous about this is if you are self-publishing, you can order author copies through KDP for the print cost. So for example, Firebrand, we're selling it for $20, but to print it, it costs $4.34. If I sell it for $20, $25 on Amazon, I'm only going to get about $8 back after all the everything that they take out of it. But if I order it for $4.34, I've already fulfilled my end of the contract. I can then sell that for whatever I want. So what actually ends up happening is we can sell books at the church or on our website for less money than it costs on Amazon, and the author will actually get a larger cut of the sale, which is just crazy. So it's slower. You don't get Amazon shipping that way, Prime shipping, but it is a good way to do it. So the other thing that it does is it helps you walk through a lot of the legal stuff easily. It gives you an ISBN, just assigns it to you. It assigns you a barcode, which normally would cost money. And the process of going through it on their website is just it's a walkthrough. What is this? Select your genre, select all this, and you go through it. What's negative about it? It does take a few weeks to get your book if you order them. You say, I'm going to get one for this weekend. No way. It's going to take 2 or 3 weeks to arrive. What I try to do is I order copies of the book, and then we try to have them ready for events and have them ready at the church. I don't want to dive too far into this process. There are tutorials that are available. They don't do anything as far as marketing is for you. And that's really the next step that we maybe could talk about next time is the actual sales process. I don't know. All I want to say is that once the book exists, it's formatted, it's edited, it's covered, it's printed, then you're done and you can have it in your hand. And that's when I can say you've finished the process. There's always more to talk about, but as we come to the end here, I'm just going to say, I do hope you write this book. I hope that you can see through how boring this episode probably was for you and realize that this is what it takes to accomplish that dream that you have. And for all of us, that is the case, that whatever you want to do, it's exciting at the beginning, but there's going to be parts where you've got to figure out font size. You know what I mean? You're going to have to vacuum the church, fix the toilet. You're going to have talks with your wife in order to resolve conflict. That's just life. And if you can't push through those things, you're never going to accomplish the things that God has called you to do. And we need your book, friend. We need that. So I hope that you will take this as inspiration and give you a little bit of motivation and clue on how to go about this process. This is Difference Makers. Thanks for tuning in today. I hope that you are motivated to go after it now. Check us out at ironworks.media. Don't forget to subscribe to BGTV Studios and be sure to get out there and finish this thing up. You started it. You've done well. Finish it so that you can make a difference.